The message had gone out to every corner of the known galaxy 3 cycles ago, written in 47 languages and broadcast on every major frequency. The Galactic Council called it the Interstellar Companion Program, a simple idea. Species that were isolated, grieving, or simply tired of being alone could apply to be paired with a companion race. A gentle partner, someone to sit beside them in the dark. Every species who received the message imagined the same thing. Soft words, share meals, perhaps music. Then humanity replied. The docking bay of Orion Reach Station had seen strange things over its long life. Warships, plague carriers wrapped in quarantine seals. Once, a Sholani elder who arrived inside a tank of liquid and communicated entirely through color pulses. But the bay workers, most of them Velhari, had never seen anything like what came off the human transport that morning. The ship was not large. It docked cleanly, no drama. The ramp lowered, and 2 humans walked out first. One was a woman with short dark hair and a steady walk, Delegate Nora Sloan, Earth's senior ambassador to the program. Behind her was a younger man named Davi, carrying 2 bags and looking unbothered by everything around him. Then the third figure came down the ramp that IT moved on 6 legs. Its shoulders reached Nora's chest. Its fur was thick and gray, darkening to black along the spine, and its paws were wide enough to cover a Velhari's face. The head was broad, the ears flat, and the amber eyes moved slowly across the bay with the calm patience of something that had never once in its life needed to hurry, that a leather band sat around its neck. On the band was a small nameplate. Roth. The bay went silent. A Velhari cargo worker stumbled backward into a stack of sealed containers. A Murak security officer reached for his side weapon and then stopped, because reaching for a side weapon felt suddenly very small. Nora walked to the welcome desk without changing her pace. Davi followed. Roth walked beside them, his claws clicking softly on the metal floor, his amber gaze drifting over the frozen crowd the way someone might look at a painting they had already seen many times. Counselor Dren was waiting at the entrance to the interstation. He was old, even by Velhari standards. His bioluminescence had faded to a faint, steady pearl white, and he stood with the stillness of someone who had lived through many surprises. He looked at Nora. He looked at Davi. He looked at Roth for a long moment. Delegate Sloan, he said carefully, "We were expecting a cultural delegation. This is our cultural delegation." Nora said. Dren's light flickered once. "That is a predator." "Yes, a very large predator." "He is," Nora agreed. "His name is Roth. He is Earthborn, Northern Tundra region. He has been bonded to a human family line for 11 years. Bonded, Dren repeated, as though the word was a door he was not sure he wanted to open. Bonded, not trained, not caged. He chose to come. There was a long pause. Somewhere behind Dren, a junior council aide had gone completely still, his data pad hovering forgotten in one hand. Roth turned his head toward the aide, studied him for 2 full seconds, then looked away. The aide let out a very quiet breath. The companion program, Dren said slowly, was designed to facilitate gentle cross-species relationships. We envisioned shared culture, art, language exchange. We brought all of that, Nora said. We also brought Roth. On Earth, the bond between humans and their predator companions is one of our oldest relationships. Thousands of years. It is not something we leave at home when we travel. Dren looked at Roth again. Roth, entirely aware of the attention and entirely unimpressed by it, walked past Dren, crossed the entrance hall, found a wide patch of floor near the far wall, and lay down. He put his enormous head on his front paws and closed his amber eyes. The tension in the room dropped by half. Dren watched this. Then he looked back at Nora. "What is he to you?" he asked. Not with hostility, with genuine, careful curiosity. Nora considered the question. When humans first started going into space, she said, the emptiness was the hardest part. Not the cold, not the distance. The feeling that nothing out there knew you were alive. We started bringing bonded animals with us. Not as tools, as proof that something in the universe cared whether we came home. She paused. Roth is that. He is our oldest answer to a very old fear. Dren was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The council will need to discuss your application formally. There are those who will object." "I expected that," Nora said. "They will say he is dangerous." Nora glanced at Roth, who had not moved. His breathing was slow and even. His eyes were still closed. "They are welcome to say it," she said. "He will not argue." Dren looked at the sleeping predator for a long time. Something moved across the old counselor's faded light. Not fear exactly. Something closer to the feeling of standing at the edge of a very deep lake and realizing you had completely misjudged its size. 30 cycles, Dren said finally. A probationary period. The council will observe and then vote. Nora nodded. "That is fair." She walked toward Roth, sat beside him on the floor, and opened one of Davi's bags to pull out a simple meal. Davi joined her. Roth did not open his eyes, but his tail moved once, a slow, heavy sweep across the floor. Dren watched them from the doorway for a long moment before turning back to his waiting council. He had a great deal to explain to the council. Nobody on Orion Reach slept well that first night. It was not that Roth did anything. That was almost the problem. He wandered the station's public corridors in the early hours, silent on his wide paws, and by morning there were 17 separate incident reports filed by species who had turned a corner and found him sitting there, watching the lights. He had not growled. He had not lunged. He had simply looked at them with those amber eyes until they remembered how to move their legs again. Sorrel read all 17 reports before sunrise and felt personally sorry for each one. She was Velhari, tall, thin-limbed, her skin a pale silver that shifted through soft greens and blues depending on her mood. Right now, it was a steady, flat gray, which in Velhari terms meant professionally holding it together. She had been assigned as humanity's cultural liaison 3 days before their arrival, and at the time she had thought it sounded like a comm posting. Cross-species music exchange, perhaps. Food traditions, maybe some shared philosophy. Nobody had mentioned Roth. She met Delegate Nora Sloan in the small meeting room near the human quarters at the start of the first full day. Nora was already there when Sorrel arrived, sitting at the table with a cup of something hot, looking through documents on a thin screen. She stood when Sorrel entered and offered a handshake, which Sorrel accepted. "I have reviewed the overnight reports," Sorrel said, sitting carefully. "There are concerns about free movement." "I expected that," Nora said. "Several species are requesting Roth be confined to your quarters during off hours." "We'll discuss it," Nora said, in a way that didn't fully commit to anything. "He doesn't sleep much. Confinement stresses him." Sorrel opened her mouth to respond, and then stopped, because the door behind her opened and Roth walked in. She had seen him from a distance in the bay. That was different. Up close, the size of him rearranged the room. The ceiling was high enough, just... His head swung towards Sorrel with a smooth, unhurried movement, and for a moment all she could see were those flat amber eyes and the slow, deliberate rise and fall of his massive chest. Her bioluminescence dropped out entirely. Puridim, the Velhari equivalent of going cold with fear. Roth crossed the room, sniffed her hand once, a warm, damp pressure, and then walked away to the far corner, where he turned in a slow circle and laid down with a heavy exhale. Sorrel sat with her hands still extended into empty air. "He does that," Davi said, appearing in the doorway with more documents and an unbothered expression. "He's just checking. He's not going to do anything." Sorrel lowered her hand slowly. Her skin was still gray. "How do you know?" Davi looked genuinely puzzled. "Because he didn't." This, Sorrel was beginning to understand, was how humans reason about Roth. Not rules, not guarantees, just a long, accumulated trust that had no single origin point, only 1,000 small moments that added up to something solid. She found it deeply uncomfortable. She also found it, against her better judgment, slightly fascinating. She spent the rest of the morning walking the station corridors with Nora, getting used to Roth's presence beside them. She noticed things. He moved closer to Nora in crowded spaces. He angled his body outward on narrow walkways, putting himself between the humans and the walls. When a Murak security officer stepped too close to Davi without warning, Roth did not growl. He simply placed himself between them, unhurried, like a piece of furniture that had decided to have opinions about where it stood. The officer backed up 3 steps without realizing why. Has he always done that? Sorrel asked. Since he was young, Norris said. Nobody taught him. He just started doing it. Sorrel thought about that for a long time. They were passing through the residential section, mostly Velhari families assigned to station life, when she saw Finn. The child was maybe 6 cycles old, sitting on a bench outside the family quarters, completely still. No glow. Flat, dim, gray-white. The same color Sorrel's own skin went when she was frightened. The child had been that way for months, ever since a violent trade dispute in the lower docks had gone wrong. The station counselors had tried. The family had tried. Finn simply sat and did not speak and did not glow. Roth stopped walking. Sorrel stopped too. Nora paused a step ahead, looked back, and said nothing. Roth looked at the child. Finn looked at Roth. Most children in the station had been told to run if they ever saw the predator. Finn had apparently not gotten that information, or simply did not care. Finn reached out one small, dim hand. Roth crossed the distance between them slowly, in the careful, measured way he seemed to do everything. He sniffed the outstretched hand. Then he lay down on the floor in front of the bench, right at Finn's feet, and put his head on his paws. Finn looked down at him. Then, for the first time in months, the child's skin lit up, just a faint, warm gold, barely there, but unmistakable. A sound followed it. Small, surprised. A laugh. Sorrel stood very still. Nora glanced at her. There was nothing smug in her expression, just a quiet acknowledgement, like someone pointing at something they had always known was there. Sorrel looked at the child, and the predator, and the thin gold light, and began, very slowly, to revise everything she had thought she understood about what humanity had brought to Orion Reach. The formal reception was held on the 5th day, in a large hall near the upper levels where the ceiling opened into a transparent dome, and the stars were always visible. It was meant to be a celebration, the official welcome of Earth's delegation into the companion program trial period. There were long tables, soft light, and food prepared for a dozen different species' dietary needs. IT was also, Sorrel suspected from the moment she arrived, going to be difficult. Ambassador Gron entered with his retinue 20 minutes after the reception began. He was Murak, broad-shelled, dark, moving with the low, heavy patience of something that had been powerful for a very long time and saw no reason to hide it. His people were not here for the companion program. They were here because they had trade agreements that required a physical presence on Orion Reach, and because Gron liked to be present when anything changed on the station. Change meant opportunity. Opportunity meant leverage that he moved through the hall with the ease of someone accustomed to the room adjusting itself around him. And he stopped when he saw Roth. He did not go still the way the Velhari did. He did not step back. He looked at Roth with the flat, calculating attention of a creature that was itself near the top of its own world's hierarchy, and he thought about what he was seeing. Then he smiled in the Murak way, which involved the lower jaw moving in a direction that was technically not threatening, but felt like it. So this is the human companion, Gron said, loudly enough for the surrounding tables to hear. His words carried a translator's neutral tone, but the shape of them had edges. I expected something cultural. A singer, perhaps. A philosopher. He looked at Nora. You brought a beast on a cord. The hall quieted. Nora set her cup down. A leather band, she said. Not a cord. And he is not on it by force. Then take it off, Gron said. It's there so others know his name, Nora said. Not so I can hold him. Gron made a sound, dismissive, low, and turned slightly toward a smaller table nearby where a delegation of Sholani sat. Elder Mav was among them, old and still in his shell, watching everything with the patience of deep water. Beside him were 3 younger Sholani who had arrived on the station 3 cycles ago to seek formal trade arbitration. Gron had been blocking that arbitration for weeks through procedural filings. It was the kind of thing no one openly challenged, because challenging Gron required resources most species on this station did not have. The council should have been more selective about who it invites, Gron said, still loud, still performing for the room. The program was designed for civilized companions. Not every species that answers a signal is ready for this table. He was still looking at Roth when he said it. but the Sholani delegates flinched. Everyone in the room understood who the words were actually aimed at. Roth raised his head. He had been lying beside Nora's chair, apparently asleep. Now he was not. His amber eyes were open and they were fixed on Gron with the kind of complete, unmoving attention that had nothing aggressive in it and was somehow worse for that. No, nobody sling. Just that steady, patient gaze. The look of something that was measuring the distance between here and a conclusion and finding no urgency in the calculation. Gron went quiet. It happened gradually, like a fire running out of air. His next words simply did not come. He stood there under that amber attention and felt, for the first time in many years, something he did not have a comfortable name for. Not fear of being hurt. Something older. The recognition that he was being seen, fully, clearly, and that whatever was looking at him had already decided he was not worth the effort, that it was worse than aggression. It was dismissal from something that outranked him in a language older than trade agreements. Nobody moved for a long moment. Then Elder Mav's shell shifted. The old Sholani leaned slightly toward the colleague seated beside him and said, quietly but not quietly enough, "The humans did not bring a pet. They brought a mirror to show us what a predator looks like when it is at peace." Gron looked away from Roth. His jaw worked once. Then he picked up a drink from a passing tray, moved to the far side of the room, and spent the rest of the reception speaking only to his own retinue. The hall began breathing again. Sorrel found herself beside Nora a few minutes later. She kept her voice low. "How did you know he would do that?" Nora glanced down at Roth, who had put his head back on his paws and closed his eyes again. "I didn't," she said. Sorrel waited for more. "It didn't come. You didn't plan it?" she said. "He just does what he thinks is right," Nora said. "Same as us. We don't always know in advance either. We just trust each other and see what happens." Sorrel looked at the sleeping predator, then at the corner where Gron stood with his back to the room, then at the Sholani delegates who were now, quietly, eating their meal with something that looked like relief. She thought about trust, about what it meant to carry something ancient and dangerous beside you, not as a weapon, but as a partner, about what the galaxy had asked for when it sent that invitation, and what, exactly, it had received. She did not have a complete answer yet, but she was beginning to understand the shape of it. By the 8th day, Finn had not left Roth's side for 3 full cycles. The Velhari Council noted this in a formal memo. Finn's parents noted it in the way parents notice things, quietly and with complicated feelings that had no clean name. The station counselor noted it and said nothing at all, because Finn had spoken 14 words in the last 2 days, which was 14 more than in the previous 3 months. Sorrel noticed it because she noticed everything now. She had stopped trying not to watch. Each morning Roth walked the corridors as he always did, and Finn was simply there, one small hand resting on the gray fur of his shoulder. The child did not run beside him. Roth kept his pace matched to Finn's, that massive body moving with a kind of slow, deliberate care that seemed to cost him nothing but was clearly a choice. When Finn stopped to look at something, Roth stopped. When Finn moved again, Roth moved. Each night Roth laid down outside the family's quarters. He did not scratch or ask. He simply settled in the corridor like a piece of geography, his breathing slow and audible, his back to the door. Station staff had complained after the first night. After the second, they stopped. After the third, someone had quietly placed a folded thermal mat outside the door, and Roth had slept on it without comment. Sorrel went to speak with Finn's parents on the 9th day. Their name was Velen and Orr, and they sat together in the small front room of their quarters with the careful posture of people who had spent a long time being very tired. "We do not understand it," Velen said. He was dim, like Finn had been. Grief had a particular color in Velhari. "We have tried everything the counselors suggested. Nothing reached her. And then this." He paused. "She told us his name yesterday," or said. She said Roth, like it was the most natural thing. First word in months. She looked at Sorrel. "Is it safe?" Sorrel thought of all the incident reports, the 17 filings, the 4 species who had requested corridor rerouting to avoid crossing his path. "I do not know how to answer that in the way you want," she said. "But I can tell you he has not harmed anyone, and I have been watching closely." Later that afternoon, she sat in the human quarters with Davi, going through cultural documentation, and she asked him what she actually wanted to know. Why do humans keep them close? She said. Creatures that could hurt you. Why not drive them away? Dobby looked up from his work. He had a comfortable face, Sorrel thought, the kind that did not feel the need to perform anything. Some species look at something dangerous and think, that's a threat. Remove it, he said. Humans do that too sometimes. But a long time ago, some humans made a different choice with certain animals. They said, what if we didn't have to be afraid of each other? What if we tried something else? He shrugged. It took a long time. Thousands of years. A lot of patience and some very bad early attempts. But here we are. Roth could kill a Murak soldier, Sorrel said. Yes, but he doesn't. No. What? Dobby thought about it seriously. Because no one gave him a reason to, he said. And because we gave him something better to do with his life than fight. Sorrel sat with that. She was still sitting with it when Nora came in and said quietly, Gron filed a complaint with the council this morning. Formal request to have Roth classified as an unregistered weapon and confined for the remainder of the trial period. The room went still. On what grounds? Dobby asked. Threat to station safety. He cited the overnight corridor incidents. He has 3 council members who are considering supporting it. Nora's voice was level. There will be a formal hearing in 4 days. Sorrel felt something tighten in her chest. She thought of Finn in the corridor. The gold light. The 14 words. I will attend, she said. Nora looked at her. You are our liaison. You don't have to take a position. I know, Sorrel said. I will attend anyway. That evening, she walked past Finn's family quarters on her way back to her own. Roth was in his usual place on the thermal mat, eyes half open, watching the corridor with his slow amber gaze. Finn was sitting beside him, leaning against his side, one small hand lost in the gray fur. Sorrel paused. Finn looked up and saw her. The child's skin was warm gold, steady now, not that first surprise flicker. Settled, like something that had found its shape and intended to keep it. Finn said Sorrel, her own name, in Finn's voice, clean and clear as water. Sorrel stood in the corridor for a moment and felt something in her own chest rearrange itself, slow and certain, into something that had not been there before. She said good night and kept walking. But she did not dim. The council chamber was full in a way it rarely was. Word had spread, as it always does on a station where everyone lives close together. The hearing was technically a closed administrative session. Somehow, nearly every senior delegate on Orion Reach found a reason to be in the adjacent observation corridor, where the glass panels gave a clear view of the proceedings. Sorrel stood among them with her arms folded and her skin a careful neutral white. Inside, Gron sat at one end of the curved table. Nora sat at the other. Roth lay on the floor beside her. There was no chain, no distrant. The choice to be there was entirely his. Counselor Drin opened the session and gave the floor to Gron first. Gron was prepared. He had filed 17 pages of documentation. The overnight incident reports, collected in one place. Photographs. Eyewitness statements from 9 species who had encountered Roth in the corridors. He presented them calmly, methodically, in the voice of someone who knew how to use bureaucracy the way others used a blade. This creature has caused distress to station residents across multiple species, Gron said. It moves without supervision. It cannot be reasoned with. It has no registration under galactic wildlife conventions. We are not a wilderness station. We are a diplomatic hub. There is no place here for uncontrolled apex predators. He sat down. Nora stood. She did not have 17 pages. She had a single screen. She turned it to face the room. This is the station's own surveillance record, she said. 41 encounters between Roth and other station residents over 9 days. In 41 encounters, he has initiated no aggressive contact. He has not damaged property. He has not threatened anyone. In 3 of those encounters, the other party was visibly distressed before he arrived, and in all 3 cases they reported feeling calmer afterward. She paused. I'm not asking you to be comfortable with what he is. I'm asking you to weigh what he's done. Drin leaned forward. The central concern, he said, is not what has happened. It is what could happen. He is a predator. If he decides to act aggressively, what control do you have? The room waited. Nora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "The same control you have over any person who chooses to act with kindness." "None. We trust him." The council shifted. This answer sat badly in a room that preferred guarantees. Gron opened his mouth to respond. Then the alarm sounded that IT was not a general alert. It was the low, specific tone of structural failure, a sound most station residents hoped never to hear. The emergency channel cut over the chamber's speakers immediately. The support column in the lower docks had buckled under an equipment failure. Partial collapse. Multiple beings reported trapped. Nora was already standing. Roth was already at the door. He moved through the station at a speed nobody who had only seen him walking would have guessed was in him. The corridors cleared ahead of him, partly because alarms were sounding, partly because of what he was. He reached the lower docks in less than 3 minutes. Sorrel, running behind with Nora and a station emergency team, arrived to find smoke and the groan of stressed metal and Roth already inside. He navigated by scent. She could see it in the way his head moved, low, sweeping, processing information no one else in the room had access to. He went directly to a collapsed section of wall where no scanner had yet found a signal, pressed his body against a fallen beam, and held. The beam outweighed him. She did not understand, watching, how he was holding it. But he was. There, he said, not in words, but in the direction of his gaze, in the pressure of his body, in everything that made Nora move without being told. The emergency team followed. A Murak aide, young and still in training armor, was pulled from the gap. Then 2 Velhari workers. Then an elderly Sholani who should not have been in the dock section at all, but had been delivering a package and was in the wrong place when the wall came down. The beam shifted. Roth's shoulder tore. Sorrel saw it happen. The metal caught him on the way down, opened a long gash through the gray fur. He did not make a sound. He stepped back from the debris, turned, and Saturday his amber eyes found Nora. He was bleeding steadily onto the floor. Nora across to him immediately, her hands already moving, already pressing. "I know," she said quietly. "I know. You did well." The Murak aide, the last one pulled out, stood in the wreckage with dust on her armor and looked at Roth. His blood was dark on the floor. His breathing was heavy. He looked back at her with those amber eyes, calm and patient, waiting for nothing in particular. She had been afraid of him since his first day on the station. She had filed one of the incident reports herself. She did not look away. Back in the council chamber, when the session resumed 2 hours later, Gron sat very still. When Drin asked him if he wished to continue his formal complaint, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said no and did not explain. The chamber accepted this without comment. Everyone in the room had seen the dock footage by then. Some things did not need explanation. Some answers did not arrive in words at all. 30 cycles came and went quietly. There was no single moment when things changed. It was more like the station itself had shifted, some small degree off its original axis, just enough that everything pointed somewhere new. Species that had rerouted their morning walks to avoid the gray predator in the corridors stopped rerouting. The Velhari family across from the human quarters left their outer door open in the evenings. Finn could be seen most afternoons sitting on the floor of the main promenade, glowing a warm and steady gold, with Roth's wide head resting in the child's lap. The formal vote came on the 31st cycle. The result was unanimous. Counselor Drin delivered the announcement in the open session hall, standing at the center podium with his faded pearl-white light steady and his posture as composed as it had been on that first day in the docking bay. Most of the station's senior delegates were present. Sorrel sat in the front row. Nora sat beside her. Roth was in the hall. There had been no discussion about whether he would be. His shoulder had healed cleanly, leaving a pale ridge of scar through the gray fur that Finn liked to trace with one small finger. Dren spoke without notes. The Council of the Companion Program admits that it did not understand humanity's application, he said. We designed this program for soft partnership. We envisioned shared songs and gentle histories. We received something older. He paused. Humanity came to us already knowing what peace costs. They had looked into the face of dangerous things for thousands of years. They had done this. and chosen again and again to reach toward those things rather than away. Not because it was safe, because they believed something worth having was waiting on the other side of their fear. He looked at Roth. They brought us proof. The hall was quiet. Earth's delegation is accepted into the Interstellar Companion Program permanently, Dren said, without condition. Afterward, the hall filled slowly with conversation and movement. Sorrel accepted her formal reassignment. No longer a temporary liaison, but humanity's permanent cultural bridge, and signed the document without hesitating. Finn, who had come with the family despite the early hour, immediately went to find Roth, who was standing near the far wall being studied from a polite distance by three Sholani researchers who were very clearly trying to look as if they were not staring. De Grand's aide found Nora near the refreshment table. She was in her training armor still, habit more than need, and she had the look of someone who had been preparing something to say for several days and was no longer sure it was good enough. She said, "I want to learn about the bonded animals, about how it works." Nora considered her for a moment. "Not testing, just looking. Come by the quarters tomorrow," she said. "I'll show you what we have." The aide nodded once and walked away, and Nora watched her go with the quiet expression of someone who recognized a particular kind of beginning. Elder Mav found Sorrel before the hall emptied. He moved slowly, his shell bright in the ceremony light, and he stopped beside her without preamble. "Every species that joined this program came to offer peace," he said. "They brought art. They brought philosophy. They brought food and music and beautiful, gentle things. Humanity brought Roth." He watched Finn pulling on Roth's ear, while Roth endured this with absolute patience. And because of it, a child is speaking again. A station is breathing easier. And a Murak soldier is asking questions she never thought to ask. He tilted his shell slightly, the Sholani gesture for acknowledgement. Peace is not always soft when it arrives. Sometimes it has amber eyes and needs a thermal mat in the corridor. Sorrel laughed. A genuine one, the kind that surprised her. She found Nora again later, near the dome where the stars were visible. The hall had mostly cleared. Roth was there, Finn asleep against his side, and Nora sat on the floor beside them, both with her back to the wall and her legs stretched out, watching the quiet room. Sorrel sat beside her. "Was it always going to work out?" she asked. Nora thought about it honestly. "No," she said. "It doesn't always. Sometimes the fear is too big on one side or the other, and the gap doesn't close. We've had that too." She glanced at Roth, at Finn's sleeping face pressed against the gray fur. "But when it does close, when something is afraid and reaches anyway, and the thing it's reaching toward chooses to be gentle, there's nothing in the universe quite like it." Sorrel was quiet. Her skin was a soft, steady green, the color, in Velhari, of something that has finally settled. She looked out at the gathered stars beyond the dome. Somewhere out there, the invitation was still traveling. Other species were reading it and imagining soft things, gentle things, singers and philosophers and shared meals. They did not yet know what was coming. Nora rested her hand on Roth's broad back and felt the slow, certain rise and fall of his breathing. She looked at the stars the same way he looked at everything, patient, unhurried, ready. This was always how it worked. You do not make the world less afraid by removing the predator. You make it less afraid by showing what the predator chose to protect.